Welcome back to the Reading and Writing Podcast. My guest today is Shauna Robinson, author of the debut novel Must Love Books. Shauna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Sure. Well, if someone hasn't yet heard about your debut novel, Must Love Books, how would you describe the novel?
It is a book about kind of being in your 20s and realizing that your dream job isn't what you imagined and just trying to figure out what to do next. It's set in publishing, and this young woman, Nora, is 27. She's been an editorial assistant for 5 years, and she's realizing, oh, this isn't what I want. And then when her pay is cut, she secretly gets a second job with a competing publisher. And she's juggling these two jobs, trying to figure out what she wants to do in life. And then she falls for an author that both publishers would love to have. So she's dealing with a lot of questions that I think a lot of people in their 20s may be dealing with and navigating as well.
Sure. Well, do you remember the original idea or impetus that led you to writing Must Love Books?
Yes, it started with a sandwich. There's a scene in I think chapter 2 where this big author is coming for a meeting, and everyone really wants to impress him because his first book did so well, and they want to sign him on for a second book. And it's a lunch meeting, and our protagonist Nora is the editorial assistant, and she is responsible for ordering the lunch during the meeting, and she gets his sandwich order wrong. And at the time when I was an editorial assistant, I was just thinking about how funny it would be if, funny to think about now, but a little bit terrifying too, if, you mess up in like a simple task where everyone is trying to impress someone and what could happen from there. So that's kind of how her relationship with this author starts off, on just based on her mistake and everything unfolding from there.
So that was the initial idea. I'm curious, how did your own experiences in book publishing inform the novel?
Honestly, it was partly laziness, because I knew, okay, I want someone to be working with someone who's kind of a big kahuna, and her company trying to impress him. What kind of industry would that be? And I was thinking, oh, well, it could be in the music industry, and it's a musician. And then I thought, or it could be publishing. And then I don't have to do any research because I could just base it on my own life. But I really just loved that idea more, because I thought, well, I've been in publishing for a few years now. I know I don't want to be in this full time, but a lot of the depictions of publishing are really kind of glittery and dreamy and exciting. And so I liked the idea of showing a different side of publishing that's a little more dreary, just to kind of tell people, hey, this also isn't amazing and beautiful. And it's okay if you're in this too, and you don't love it as much as you thought you would.
And on that note, what was your experience in book publishing?
So
was it dreary?
I mean, there were some fun moments too, but yeah, like my experience was all in like nonfiction publishing. Mm-hmm. So I had a couple of internships in college. One was at a university press, and another was at Wiley, the company that I went on to work for several years. And at Wiley, we published like professional development books for professors in higher education. And that was where I primarily, the division I worked in. They also did books for like business, the business side, and nonprofits and K-12 teachers. And so it wasn't anything that I had seen depicted in movies or television where they're working on fiction, and isn't that exciting? And you've got the best, like the next best-selling novelist you're talking to. And, this is different. Like these authors are like exciting in their own ways, but just not something that I would ever like run into. I'm not going to, be in a bookstore browsing and see a professional development book for professors and really want to read it myself. And also at Wiley, there were a lot of companies going through a lot of changes. And so there were some layoffs, and like my boss and his boss were all laid off not long after I got there. So I also just saw a different side, in the sense that it wasn't doing so well at that time. And so when you're working at a company and you have all these visions of how it's going to go, and then you get there and it's just kind of crumbling to the ground, that can also kind of taint your view of that industry, even though I know, that's not the case for a lot of other publishing companies.
So I'm curious about your own writing journey. I know that Must Love Books is your debut novel, but was it actually the first novel that you wrote, and were you writing as you were working in publishing?
Okay. I am just going to embarrass myself here. So this is my first book that I wrote. I was a 25-year-old editorial assistant. I got that sandwich idea and I decided to turn it into publishing and I just kind of ran with that. But I had been writing creative fiction since I was 13, but it was fan fiction, and I would post it online, and I met my best friend there online when we were 13. And so I was just part of this community of writers just as a teenager, where we would all post stories, and comment on each other's stories. And so that was my first entrance into writing fiction. And so Must Love Books was kind of the first thing I wrote where it wasn't fan fiction, and I didn't really know how to the process of making something a book. In the I worked in publishing, but it wasn't fiction, so we didn't have agents where we worked or anything like that. So it was just something for years that I would just kind of dabble at as I had time, because it's just kind of a ridiculous idea to think, okay, yeah, this little Word document thing that I'm writing is totally going to become something one day. So I really got to, work on it every day. It wasn't like that. It was just, okay, let me indulge my silly dream for a few minutes today and then not touch it for 6 months. So I started writing it when I was 25. I didn't finish the first draft until 3 years later. And even then I set it aside for another several months before I started revising. So it was definitely a learning experience for me because it took so long. And I think for my second novel, I was a lot more dedicated, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to believe this is going to work out. So I'm just going to start writing now. I'm just going to write every day. But for this one, the path was a lot more meandering.
That's interesting. Well, you mentioned fan fiction. Was there a particular show or book that you focused on for your fan fiction?
See, it would have been cool if it had been a show or a book or something fictional. It was not. It was the Canadian pop rock band Simple Plan. There was just something about them. That little 13-year-old me was just like, yes, I need to write stories about these people who exist in real life. Now, I did find my community of other delusional 13-year-olds who also wanted to write about this band. But I feel just so much less cool when I meet other people who wrote fan fiction. They're like, oh yeah, I wrote for this book or for this TV show. And I'm like, yes, fictional things that a normal person would write about. Yeah, good for you.
So shifting gears a little bit, are there concrete actions that book publishers can take to foster a more diverse culture and workplace?
That is an excellent question. I would say maybe it starts with salary, in the sense that I think a lot of people who go into publishing in the first place are lucky that they may have some kind of support system to fall back on financially, because salaries in publishing are so low. I worked at Wiley for almost 4 years, and my salary just remained in the 30s the entire time. And that was after a promotion and annual salary increases and things like that. And for a lot of people who can get by on these low salaries, they often have financial support from parents or a spouse or something like that. But and so they tend to typically be white. For other people who come from more diverse backgrounds, they may not have that financial safety net, and they just cannot take jobs that offer such low salaries. I'm also seeing more flexible working conditions start to become available as a result of the pandemic, and so hopefully that continues. But because I do think people have good intentions when it comes to hiring, but diversely, but with the salaries they're offering, that doesn't always show.
Sure. Hi, this is Jeff, the host of the Reading and Writing Podcast. I wanted to tell you about an app that can change how you plan parties and celebrations at your home. Drizzly. Drizzly is the most convenient way to buy beer, wine, and spirits, with delivery to your doorstep in under 60 minutes. Are you hosting a book club party and you need a couple of bottles of wine? Well, keep in mind Drizzly. Or Do you and your friends make cocktails based on your favorite book characters or novels? If so, again, use Drizzly. That's DRIZLY.com. Drizzly is the #1 app for alcohol delivery. Again, that's Drizzly, DRIZLY.com. And right now, if you act, Drizzly is giving every new customer $5 off their first order. Just use the promo code FAST5 at checkout. Hey, this is Jeff, the host of the Reading and Writing Podcast. Thanks again for listening to the podcast. I have a company that I want to tell you about that I think you will definitely be interested in as a podcast listener. Family Sounds. Have you ever gone to a family reunion and traded stories and laughed with your relatives, and later you thought, gosh, I wish there was some way that we had a way to preserve those stories and preserve those memories when we're not face to face? Well, now you do with Family Sounds. Family Sounds can create an hour-long podcast that's just for you, that's just for your family, that tells the stories of your family and your relatives. And Family Sounds team, they're pros. They've done this before. They have lots of experience crafting stories for public broadcasting through radio and podcasts. They will use your family's voices as well as a professional narrator to tie the story together. Again, the name of the company is Family Sounds, and you can find them at family-sounds.com/books. Again, that is family-sounds.com/books. Family Sounds, your memories, your family in a podcast today. So check them out. family-sounds.com/books. Thanks for listening. Well, did working in publishing, and as you've explained, you were working in nonfiction and some academic publishing, did that impact your experience after you wrote the novel, or was it completely a new experience for you to find an agent and go through kind of the publication process?
Yeah, the agent finding process was brand new to me because I just didn't work with agents on my side of publishing. Like, we were publishing books for professors who were just, thrilled to have a book to put on their CVs. So, agents just typically weren't a thing. And so that was all brand new to me. So I did a lot of research on like Query Shark and just various blog posts and things by authors who were putting that information out there. And so that was how I learned about what a query letter is and what the querying process is like. And of course, once I got an agent and was then working with the publisher who bought my book, I was then a lot more familiar with like what publication schedules are like and what kinds of delays and mishaps can happen. But the agent process was very new to me.
Well, what was the writing process for you when you were working on Must Love books? I mean, you did mention that it took you a while and you would, write a little bit and then go several months without working on it. During that time, though, once you started working on the book, did you outline the plot, or was it really a sense of just following the narrative as you were working on it?
I started with the sandwich scene because that was like my first little nugget. And then after that, so I just started writing that because I really wanted to. And then I was like, I should outline. But my outlines are just more kind of adorable aspirations than anything I'll actually follow. So I did outline it. I've since come across that outline, and then I even like stopped outlining it at one point. Like it ended, I think, at the climax. So I was like, I don't know, I'll figure it out when I get there. So I outlined, but I really didn't follow it.
Gotcha. So are you working on a new novel now?
Yes. My second book it also kind of revolves around books, which I guess is a problem I have, but it is set in a bookstore. It's not a sequel. It's completely separate, but it's just basically about someone who is working in a bookstore for a few months in a small town with a lot of rules, and she doesn't even really like books. And so she just kind of raises a little hell while she's there. And that is, I'm going through revisions with my publisher right now. So I just turned in my first revision on Monday. So I am very excited about the fact that I won't be working on that for the next couple of weeks, but I'm excited about that book in general. So it's a bit of a different tone. It's a little more silly than my first book, but I'm excited for the silliness.
That's great. Well, what writing advice would you offer for those who are working on their own stories or novels?
For me, I think what has helped has just been writing consistently. And that's the biggest thing, even if you don't know where something is going, if you don't know what you're doing, just sitting down. And I know people can have different processes, like whether to write like for X amount of time every day or aiming for X amount of words every day. Whatever works best for you is fine. But just being consistent and whatever that means to you, if it's like 5 minutes a day, an hour a day, or 100 words a day, 1,000 words a day, just consistency is key. But of course, it's also fine if you're feeling burnt out to just take a break. That's good too. But I really didn't make any progress consistently until I really started writing a little bit every single day. Because by then it's just always in your mind. You're always going to be thinking about it. Even if you're stuck on a plot thing, it's still always going to be in the back of your mind, and you're going to have an easier time progressing.
Well, what novels or nonfiction books have you read recently that you enjoyed and that you would recommend?
Okay. So I've been having a lot of fun reading kind of contemporary novels that are new releases. Like just in the last couple of years when I was more serious about writing, I was like, oh, I should, read new books in my genre. Because normally I would like go to used bookstores because the books are cheaper and just buy old books for like a couple of dollars. So reading new books is like a very basic thing, but it's been a revelation for me. So I have really enjoyed Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly, which comes out on January 18th, the same day, 2022, the same day that my book comes out. But it was just really fun to read. And it's just set in like a cooking competition, that like reality show where these two contestants kind of fall for one another. And like, I love all things cooking and I love love. And it was just beautifully written and has some wonderful diversity and representation. And I think that'll be a wonderful book for 2022. I also really loved Have We Met by Camille Baker, which came out this summer. And that has a little bit of like technology mystery, kind of like Black Mirror, where it's about someone who gets a message from a mysterious dating app that appears on her phone and says that, she's already met her soulmate and that it's sending her potential soulmates to her. And so it's just got that kind of weird quirkiness of it, but it's also very grounded and real. And the main character is dealing with grief from the death of her best friend and also just navigating her own life in her 20s and figuring out what she wants to do in her career while also dealing with this weird app that keeps popping up and various encounters with potential alleged soulmates. So that was a really beautiful book too that I loved. I just felt like it covered so many things that I love, where it covers something serious, but is also a little lighthearted, but covers a lot of struggles that people deal with.
That's interesting. I'm sure there are people who would want that app.
Yeah, I know. Only.
So where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you and your debut novel, Must Love Books?
So I have a woefully neglected Twitter account at Shauna Robs, ShaunaRobs. And I have a woefully neglected website at ShaunaRobinsonBooks.com. I do have my basic information there, like my bio and my book and where you can find it. So that's something.
That's great. Well, again, we've been speaking with Shauna Robinson, author of the debut novel, Must Love Books. The book is on sale now, so go buy a copy at your local independent bookstore. And Shauna, thanks for doing this interview.
Thank you so much for having me. And congratulations on over 500 episodes of this podcast. That's amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.